if you could do it again, would you still double down or use that slogan, defund the police?
Absolutely.
Do you hear that right there? Absolutely, she says. Cori Bush. You see, folks, these leftists, these radical liberal Democrats who are actually sitting in office. This isn't some citizen out there spewing it on Twitter. This is an elected Democrat official. They have no shame. Even when they're called out by one of their own, right there on CNN, they double down on their destructive rhetoric. It's making neighborhoods less safe. What do I mean by that? Well, let's get real. Their whole defund police movement they've been pushing for several years now is one of the main reasons as to why crime is on the rise, why it's running rampant in almost every Democrat city, and there's other reasons, but that's one of the main ones. Criminals are taking advantage. They're taking advantage of what? A shortage on police forces, because cops can't take it anymore. You can't just hit them with a wide brush and say, everybody's a racist that are cops. We got to get rid of all of them. Like Cori Bush does, like Democrats do. Crooks know it. So they take advantage of the shortage. They also take advantage of the fact that there's elected officials out there and prosecutors doing nothing to stop the criminals, not punishing them like they should be, justly and swiftly. No. They're releasing them without bail, giving them short-term sentences or no sentence at all. You see, because their woke movement is all in the name of social justice, but it's getting people killed. Not just cops, it's getting innocent people killed in cities around our country. And there's so many new headlines this week. I saw the father killed in New York randomly by those two thugs. No rhyme or reason why. We could go there like the left does and say color of his skin, color of their skin, but I'm just going to say it's a horrible crime that happened in New York with that father getting killed. And how about this next heartbreaker, which, oh, by the way, you'll barely see either one of these stories, the one I just mentioned in New York or the one I'm going to discuss now, covered by the lamestream media. And why is that? Well, I would say it's because of the killer's background, his ethnicity, and his prison record. But oh no, I'm sure that's not why they're not covering it. Anyway, let's head to California and fill you in on this just gruesome, horrific, multiple murder. 4 family members, including an 8-month-old, a little baby. Look at that little sweetheart there, being held by her daddy next to her mommy. They were kidnapped Monday from a business in Central California, Merced County. Did you hear about it on the news when they were kidnapped? When the APB went out all around California, let's find these 4 and this family? Nope, bet you didn't. Authorities announced then last night that all 4 family members had been found dead. The victims, again, an 8-month-old, the parents, and then the uncle, who was the father's brother there, you see on the right side of your screen. On Tuesday, Jesus Manuel Salgado, that was the scum you saw on the other side of the picture with the tattoos. He was taken into custody after a credit card belonging to one of the victims was used at an ATM that morning. Salgado, get this, was convicted back in 2007 of witness intimidation, of a home invasion, a robbery, at gunpoint, and false imprisonment. That's like kidnapping. All that was connected to an incident in 2005. He did finally go to jail then, I think in 2007, but then he got paroled in 2015. So he's out for 7 years, and then does this to an innocent family. No word on motive. Cops say maybe there's a connection between Salgado and the victims, but they're still trying to figure out the motive to do something this heinous. 4 people. And so as these politicians continue talking out of both sides of their mouth, which is what they do, you've heard it in the last few weeks because midterms are coming. Oh, Joe Biden and the rest of them, we're concerned about law and order. The right's not because of January 6th. We care about our cops. We want to protect citizens. What are you doing to protect them then? Nothing. You're protecting the criminals. Matter of fact, some of you liberals are creating laws that help protect them. Earlier this week, Gavin Newsom signing a bill that will seal the criminal records of select former offenders. Oh yeah. Now that's if certain criteria is met. deemed by the state of California. But regardless, they're going to pick and choose. I'm pretty sure if I own a home and I'm leasing it to someone, or I have a business, I'm going to hire them, I should know if they are a criminal piece of trash. Now, in order for the record to be sealed, they've got to complete their sentence, and then they got to maintain a clean record for 4 years. And if they do so, they'll be good. Now, let me just point out, because I hope your wheels are spinning here. The story I just told you about, that piece of trash went to prison 07, got out in 15. He's been out 7 years. So if this is in effect, and you scrub his record, no one would know what he had already done, which was hold people at gunpoint, imprison them in their home, false imprisonment, and rob them. Now he took it a step further. He robbed people and killed them, including an 8-month-old. This law will go into effect next July. And guess what? It will include sex offenders and people convicted of serious violent crimes. Now, law enforcement and schools get access. But again, nobody else. Let's keep it with crime because it's out of control, folks. One city that's struggling with a massive growth in crime due to these lax on crime elected officials and DAs is the city of New Orleans. The city's, guess what? See that headline right there? Wall Street Journal. #1 murder rate. They're up 141%. Shootings up 100%. Carjackings 210%. The homicide rate right now, only 9 months and a few days, right? It's October 6th? 9 months in, the homicide rate in New Orleans has surpassed last year's. City officials and residents say the police department is overwhelmed. The city only having about 50 to 60% of the officers they actually need to protect the residents. And why is that? Because cops are quitting. The department stretched so thin that the average 911 response, we're told, can be up to 2.5 hours. Now, with all this, the New Orleans Police Department is now having to kind of scrape the bottom of the barrel looking for help. The department's out there trying to hire just civilians to staff for certain workload crises, whatever, to try to help out the cops. Civilians are going to probably respond to certain calls that don't require police presence. They're going to answer phone calls, do some administrative stuff, whatever they can do to help out, because they don't have enough cops. Here now to sound off about what's happening down in the Big Easy. He's Louisiana's Attorney General and a Republican candidate for governor. I want to welcome to the program Jeff Landry. Jeff, how about it? I don't want to point the finger solely at the radical left, this defund police movement and Democrats and DAs, but I don't think I have to, because all signs point right to it.
Yeah, you're right. Look, you're right that it is absolutely these woke DAs and these incompetent mayors that have made America's great cities basically being run like third world countries. Crime is completely out of control. 7 years ago, when I became the Attorney General, I went out trying to work on crime in New Orleans. We basically predicted that this was going to happen to the city unless fundamental changes were made to the way that you fought crime in New Orleans. We warned that the state of Louisiana was going to end up with a violent crime wave if the legislature went out and basically mishandled criminal justice reform, which they did. And now what we have is some of the most violent cities in the country. And we intend next year is going to be an important year. Next year, there'll be only 3 governors up after this big midterm. 3 governors, Mississippi, Kentucky, and Louisiana. And in Louisiana, we get an opportunity to take a seat back from a Democrat governor right here in Louisiana. And that's why we're running. And we're going to run on crime. I was a police officer, a sheriff's deputy, an MP in the Army National Guard. And we intend to make our streets safe again.
And Jeff, I would imagine you've got Democrat running New Orleans, city council, commissioners. You're talking about the governor, the legislator. I mean, so it's pretty much, I'm going to call it what it is. It's crime corruption from the top down, because all of them, even though they give us lip service and say they're for law and order, they support police, They're not doing it in their actions. They're not doing it in the bills and legislation they pass or propose. And obviously, locally in New Orleans, they don't have a clue what the hell they're doing.
Well, it's certainly showing up in the statistics.
Yeah.
I've been very, very critical. One of the biggest problems the city of New Orleans has, and it's actually the same problem that other cities who are in the top 10 murder capitals of the country,
Chicago.
right? Those that are listed in the top 10, Chicago, St. Louis, Baltimore. But Baltimore and New Orleans are both under federal consent decrees. And so for those that are listening out there and watching, a federal consent decree is when the federal government comes in and takes over your police department. And almost all of these consent decrees along major cities around the country, like New Orleans, were done under then Attorney General Eric Holder.
Oh.
And every one of those cities have become some of the most dangerous cities in the world.
I did not know that. That's huge news. So this again, but I've always drawn similarities between the Obama and the Biden administration now, and obviously we know back under Obama, he began that rhetoric, the anti-cop rhetoric. We remember the Michael Brown shooting and how Obama politicized that shooting. And to me, that's when this attack on law enforcement and law and order really began, was under the Obama regime. I didn't know that about the cops and the police departments. Wow.
Absolutely. What those consent decrees do is create what I call hug-a-thug type policies under which you give more rights to the criminals than you do to the victims. And when you lay that over on incompetent mayors, woke district attorneys, corrupt judges, then what you have is basically lawlessness inside of these cities. And so the city of New Orleans is actually it's actually struggling from a number of factors. It has a federal consent decree, both over the police department and the jail. It has an incompetent mayor, and it has a woke district attorney. And guess what? Those are ingredients. In Louisiana, we love to cook, and so we talk about ingredients. We make gumbo out here, a lot of great ingredients. If you wanted to make a crime gumbo, it's right there in New Orleans.
Yeah,
and that's what you see.
You got the feds involved in your cops. You got a woke DA, and you got an idiot mayor. You got the trifecta of crime just blowing up down there. And it's happening, like you said, everywhere. I mean, the numbers, Jeff, I looked at them. So it's 220 or 221 murders to date in New Orleans versus about 800 last year in Chicago. But look at the per capita. That city's got less than 400,000. Chicago's got 8.9 million. That's a lot of murders for a little town. That's not a big city to have 220 already.
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, there is no doubt that the criminals in New Orleans shoot a lot straighter than the criminals anywhere else in the country. And that's a problem. There is no doubt. I mean, and you can't hide those types of statistics. It's not like shoplifting or petty crime.
Right.
You can't, those are kind of crime statistics that can be inflated or basically swept under the rug. It's very tough to sweep under the rug a homicide, right? Because you have a family member involved. You have loved ones involved. In the city of New Orleans, they are piling up murder victims on top of each other. And it is literally incomprehensible. It's disgusting, and it needs to stop.
Jeff, real quick, last one, because you brought up the mayor. I believe it's Miss Cantrell, if I got her name right. She was in the headlines a week or so ago because she spent about $33K of taxpayer money on first-class tickets to fly her butt around. She said she needed to do so because of racism, because she didn't feel safe flying in coach like the rest of us peons around the country. Well, now, today, she says she's going to pay it back. Your thoughts?
Well, no, she's not paying it back out of goodwill. She's paying it back because she broke the law.
Yeah.
And she should be held accountable for that. What is a shame is that if you start to put up in a collage the faces of the victims, the murder victims in the city of New Orleans, you would find that a vast majority of those victims come out of the Black community.
I know.
And you know what? Those communities deserve to live in safe neighborhoods. We've been saying that for 7 years. I've always said that regardless of what type of neighborhood you live in, what is your economic status, you deserve to live in peace and harmony. And all of the neighborhoods in New Orleans deserve to be safe neighborhoods.
Yeah, well, here's how I look at it, Jeff. The Democrats created the crime bill back in the 90s that put more minorities behind bars. Then now come the 2000s, they try to claim in the name of social justice, we're going to free y'all, help y'all, and be nice to black and brown people. But in what you just said, what they're doing by not allowing criminals to be prosecuted and spend time behind bars for hardcore crimes, they're now affecting and harming the black and brown folks in their communities, like you just said, because they're the ones that are taking the brunt of all this crime. So it's a vicious cycle, and the Democrats keep spinning it. Anyway, Jeff, the website, you're running for governor. They're wrapping me up in my ear big time. JeffLandry.com.
Yes.
You want to learn more about his bid to become the next governor in the great state of Louisiana, and it sure seems like they need some help, and that state better turn red because the blues don't know what in the hell they're doing down there. Take care, Jeff.
Thank you.